Welcome to Slash Forward. Bloody New Year follows a group of teenagers who find themselves stranded on a misbegotten island that time forgot. As they explore deeper and become entangled in the strange time-warping phenomenon that seems to envelop the island, they teeter perilously close to becoming victims of a brutal and agonizing fate. A fate they could have been forewarned of by a fortune teller had they not pissed off a trio of dirtbag tossers. As the movie begins, we open over a credit sequence taking place during some sort of swanky all-ages wedding/New Year's party in 1960. As the final stragglers file out, the last lady gets sucked into a mirror. Keep an eye out to see how, or if, this plays into the plot later. We flash forward to an unknown place at a time when flannel was considered appropriate beachwear. Tired of being the perpetual fifth wheel, Spud retreats to the boardwalk to find a partner. The remainder of the gang follow him there as the boardwalk is meant for incels and lovers alike. Spud has a really good stroke of luck when he runs across a woman being accosted on the tilt-a-whirl by several carnies trying to give her the ride of her life. He supervises for a bit to make sure things don't get out of hand, right up until his mates arrive. Tom lets Spud and Rick take part in the scuffle, and as the men jockey for dominant position, he gets the grand idea to go to the source and start yanking breakers. Leslie and Janet are at the fortune teller about to get some bad news when Rick pops in to gather them up. You see, they're running from some men while also withholding the men's property, so they're caught in a bit of a catch-22. They reach the end of the road and are walked down by these hard men in their herringbone knuckle necklaces, so they dip into the nearby funhouse where Spud and Carol had been necking. Things are starting to heat up in this dark cavern of horrors, but then the Wagoneer comes crashing through with boat in tow and somehow manages to destroy the place while only collecting people on top rather than underneath. Being firmly established on deck, they are able to discard the skags one by one. And honestly, the way they show concern for their larger, older mentor is really sweet. You can tell they see him as a father figure. Then they really escape hard as they take an afternoon sail out into international waters where anything goes. It's a fine, casual, breezy summer day until Spud steers them over some rocks while in the shallows. Tom, always thinking fast, throws a towel on it to soak up the intruding water, but it's too much. Having dealt with this before, they all fall into their roles, battening down various hatches, taking in various sails, freaking the freak out, and so forth. Rick, the soft bastard, refuses to go down with the ship. Luckily for all of them, they're within wading distance of a nearby mysterious island. Despite the barbed wire and clear signage indicating unfriendly territory, there really are an abundance of well-kept walking trails, along with some sweet plane wreckage. Luckily, this remote island is occupied by the Grand Island Hotel. When they venture inside, they're greeted by Christmas decorations despite it being July.
This stuff's all fresh.
Since a gentleman doesn't ring twice, they split up to find various means of drying off, warming up, and connecting with the proprietor. Tom and Leslie go to assert squatters' rights in the bar, but Leslie is freaked out when she sees a face in the window. Tom goes out to look around but doesn't find anything. That's okay, because when he returns, Leslie's pretty much over it now. So they get on with helping themselves to some drinks while some poltergeist shenanigans go on behind them. Carol and Spud warm themselves by the fireplace as she ponders how she even got to this strange point when all she was trying to do was kill a little time at the fun fair waiting for her friends. Hoping she doesn't lose interest in him, Spud immediately runs off to find a nice warm blanket for her. But no sooner does he leave than does a ghost nanny phase in and tend to her needs on his behalf. Spud's pursuit of linens takes him deep into the hotel, where he ends up following the sound of music in the event there are people congregating. What he finds is a classic rock duo that absolutely mesmerizes him and requires him to question reality as he attempts to find his way back out. Meanwhile, upstairs, Rick and Janet have found their way into someone else's clothes, which is kind of weird when you think about it. Jan catches a glimpse of the true owner and it makes her feel like she's going absolutely mad. In a testament to inefficiency, they then work on shedding the clothes they just stole while the sad old biddy looks on, dropping that single tear. Elsewhere, Leslie and Tom manage to find the billiards room. When presented with a clear choice,
I wonder what it's like doing it on a snooker table.
Tom gets flustered. I mean, what is he even supposed to say to that? He redirects to continuing their search for the fuse box to try to restore power. In the meantime, Spud returns from his adventure and describes his experience as other people playing games, ignoring the obvious supernatural elements. In either event, he recommends they leave. But down in the basement, she can't stop throwing herself at him and suggests they take advantage of the cellar bed that's set up down there. Tom, however, is a bro, and he doesn't let anything deter him from his mission to help out his boy Rick with the power. They light a candle, which really brightens up the place, leading to Tom finding the power and flipping the switch that trips the box of firecrackers. They sit back and enjoy the presentation of lights and sounds for a moment, then everyone regroups in the lobby as the whole place goes crazy. Tom reveals that he turned on the power, which is likely what caused all the electronics to go haywire. So with that mystery solved, they go off in search of additional dry clothing. As they do that, we pan and scan in on an old news program in which some science douchers discuss a new plane-based radar avoidance technology that possibly bends and twerks in the face of space-time. They get dressed up like some greasers, while we're left to wonder if there's any connection between these strange happenings and the wreckage they found along the way. Dry and warm with a couple of cocktails in them, Carol is now positively buzzing about this crazy and interesting day she's had that started from a simple trip to the fun fair. Leslie hears something down the hall that sounds like voices, but they arrive to find an empty cinema. Obviously, someone had to have turned it on, so Rick goes to find the prankster and pummel him. They all enjoy watching the boys blasting away at some brains, but the film ends before Rick can figure anything out. Upon conclusion, the secondary starts rolling and displays a documentary about the hotel. As a length of film delicately binds Rick's ankles the way he likes, Spud mildly entertains everyone with his mediocre film commentary. So mid, the Sheik actually jumps out to make him stop. His pals come in for a closer look just in time to witness him getting scratched up before the apparition zooms through the projection booth, tripping up Rick. When he gets back to the auditorium,
he's really dead.
He looks okay though. While everyone tries to come to terms with what they just saw, Janet copes by losing her damn mind. Rick takes off after her while the rest of them take a beat to sort through their feelings. Tom and Leslie decide they should go look for a communication post or some other sign of life on this godforsaken island. They stumble upon a cute little craftsman-style home that Leslie treats like it belongs to her. But as a cautionary tale for all of us, she gets caught up in a net filled with hooks, which she makes much worse by thrashing about. Tom manages to free her by bringing the net to climax. Leslie intends to get herself bandaged up, but in a stroke of bad luck, the net was the table's wife, and he doesn't take kindly to murder. Tom does manage to eventually harpoon the foul beast back to flat, but majorly tweaks his back in the process. Meanwhile, Rick is finally caught up with Janet and settles her. They hear some laughter, probably at Rick's hair, and they take it as a good omen since it indicates happy people nearby. They try to go meet them, but arrive at a clearing where the laughter seems to be coming from the trees themselves. They set to running and are eventually overtaken by some strange force. Nevertheless, they continue their retreat and are menaced by a random assortment of footprints that appear and disappear, indicating some ghosts performing a herky-jerky dance of some sort. Despite the clear sky, they hear what sounds like a dive-bombing plane, which is followed by an explosion. When they investigate, they discover the charred-out husk of a building that contains a plane wrecked long ago and glimpses of its pilot all around them. Back at the hotel, Carol is still waiting around when she catches sight of some movement in the woods nearby. Assuming it to be Rick and/or Janet, she goes off after them and eventually arrives at the maid's lodgings. In the attempt to find her friend, she inadvertently opens the walk-in freezer, and the subsequent weather event this instigates forces her to huddle in the corner of an adjacent room. Any hope of respite is dashed when the fire fails to warm her, but when all hope appears to be lost, she wakes up outside completely warm and dry, only frozen now in effigy. They all arrive back at the front of the hotel at the same time and quickly determine that Leslie's emergency with Tom takes precedence. But when they arrive, Tom is gone. Rick's investigation is brought to an early end when he nearly yeets himself into the horizon, but they eventually get him back on solid ground.
Tom must be down there.
Why is that? But when they go to circle around and check, that one guy is here now. The two bulls face off and Rick treats his guest to a series of thrust kicks, but succumbs to a punch that takes place over a 3-day weekend. The brute then tries to test Leslie's core strength but finds her to be made of paper mache. This is because she is no longer real, and her new form easily sends him through a wall. And she does have a hard time trying to gauge Rick's inconsistent netsmanship, which gives him the chance to pop off an emergency flare so they can lock themselves outside. In response to all of this, Janet pulls another Janet. This sort of impulsiveness puts them all in danger, but mostly her. Once it's clear she's learned her lesson, she does get pulled pulled out of the tiger pit and they continue on. Now, having established that something is clearly wrong, they resolve to stick together and assume it's the men from the fun fair who have been doing all of this. That is a relief because it means there are only 2 more of them to deal with and then they'll be free. To begin, they work to lock themselves inside the safe and normal hotel. Leslie arrives at the front and tries to convince them that she's scared outside, but they know better now, so her presence only prompts them to also lock the windows. But them carnies be coming through walls. And even though Carol handles this order of business, Janet runs off shrieking for Rick, and she is confronted by the lanky one who spends too long leering at her, and Leslie ends up pooping out of this ceiling sphincter and lowers him to crotch level. Then he obediently plants himself there firmly, while she slowly and delicately twists his head around several times. Rick has been absent, but he makes a huge score when he finds a shotgun. So when Janet tries to back away slowly and is secured in place by the newel post, Rick neutralizes the advancing threat by exploding her stomach with his first shot and killing her with the second. They all get worked into a bit of a frenzy then as Carol cuts Janet free and Rick dismembers his old friend, just to be sure. As they come down from their blood fury, it dawns on them that the men must have come to the island by boat. But before they can explore that, Tom shows back up again, mumbling about warning the others and whatnot, as if they don't already know.
I'll stay here with Tom. Just find the boat and come back to us.
Are they bringing the boat back? If not, they'll be in no better of a position than if they all just went. Oh well. As they make their way through the woods, Carol finally catches on that they're being watched by some pervert in the bushes. And since the perv runs away, Rick feels confident in giving chase. They soon arrive in the Valley of Fog and Mirrors and find a crash site encampment with an active radio station sending out an SOS. As they search around, the ghost pilot has the audacity to reach out for human connection. So without even knowing his motives, Rick explodes his head. Right as they leave, they spy the boat floating nearby and go back for the others. Meanwhile, Janet's nursing Tom back to health, and he begins insisting she confess her inner desires in an increasingly demonic voice. Knowing what this means, Jan runs off, but never too far. Luckily, this supernatural entity is easily ensnared within tinsel and branches. Through his insistence in pawing at her through the elevator gate, we all learn a few lessons about the importance of elevator safety. The others return to a gruesome scene, and despite the urgency, they are unable to get the elevator lowered before Janet becomes a part of the hotel's inner workings. The last funfair boy wakes up still severely concussed, but heads toward them regardless. Carol grabs Rick and they run to the kitchen with Ace in hot pursuit. Unfortunately, the kitchen hungers for flesh, and with enchanted kitchens, you gotta be on your toes. He gets dumped into an industrial rice cooker that then serves up his blood. Having dealt with this before, Carol hides them away in the pantry until everything stops going wacky and tidies itself back up. As they continue escaping from this, Leslie pulls herself back together. They're called into the auditorium by Janet's disembodied voice and walk into a dance marathon they weren't prepared for that is scheduled to go on for eternity. Through expositional dialogue, we get confirmation that the plane with the radar equipment crashed and malfunctioned in a way that caught them all up in a time loop, leaving us to wonder if it really even matters at this point. They decline to take part in this community. Along the way, all their old friends make cameos to laugh and threaten them. Luckily, they are as inept in death as they were in life, just a little bit more yucky. As has been the case with every other supernatural event, if you just ride it out for a little while, you're good. Having now failed in every attempt, the faction of Lost Souls comes out and just makes a simple plea to ask them to join their group. While it seems like they might actually be about to make a sale, the snooker table has its own agenda and catapults them into the front yard. Out there, as before, they turn around to find everything appearing as normal. Recognizing their renewed desire to live a full life, they take off for the boat and find it still ready and waiting. They quickly disembark, but then the specter of Janet seduces Rick with her siren song, leading him into a little bit of some quicksand. The old guy then arrives and squares up with his dome so he can introduce a boat prop to Rick's face. Carol is horrified but has no time to process this as she discovers the open sea is no safe space. Now they're all caught in the eternal party of the hotel, which doesn't look half bad despite Carol's protestations. I wasn't expecting a prescient and impactful message about resisting peer pressure, but here we are. You should watch this video next as it's also about dangerous boating. But the danger is derived from a mutated biological weapon that stows away and absolutely shreds the occupants. Now that we're here, I want to congratulate you for making it to the end of the video and affirm that you are a very special person because of it. And if you enjoyed the video, I would love for you to become part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.